Paris, 1925. Imagine a man so persuasive he could sell you your own shoes while you're wearing them and make you thank him for privilege. Now crank that up to selling the Eiffel Tower, not once, but twice. That man was Victor Lustig, a con artist so smooth he could convince a mirror to lie about his reflection. He wasn't born into money, power, or fame. He was born in Austria-Hungary in 1890, but he came with an arsenal more dangerous than any weapon, languages, charm, and a face you'd instantly trust. He could slip between French, German, English, Italian, and Czech like most people swap coats. Always dressed like he just stepped out of a royal portrait. He could sit in a cafe, sip coffee, and make you feel like you'd known him for years, while also figuring out the quickest way into your wallet. And Victor didn't sell the Eiffel Tower because he had to. He sold it because it was there. The tower, back then, wasn't the untouchable Parisian crown jewel we think of today. Built for the 1889 World's Fair, it was only supposed to stand for 20 years before being dismantled. By the roaring 20s, the Iron Giant was showing her age, rust creeping in, repair costs ballooning, and officials debating whether she was worth the trouble. And that's when Victor, flicking through his morning newspaper at some fancy Paris cafe, spotted a tiny spark of possibility. If the government might someday sell it for scrap, why couldn't he just beat them to it? The plan needed theater. So Lustig became an actor, the most convincing government official Paris never had. He forged stationery with a ministry letterhead, rented a luxury suite at the Hotel de Crillon, the kind of place where real power brokers actually met, and sent discreet invitations to 6 of the city's biggest scrap metal dealers. The meeting, he warned, was strictly confidential. When they arrived, Lustig stood there in a perfectly tailored suit, radiating quiet authority. He spoke in low tones about the difficult decision the government had reached. The Eiffel Tower would be dismantled. Maintenance costs, he said gravely, had become unbearable. Of course, the public couldn't know until after the sale. And these gentlemen, well, they were the chosen few. It was a masterpiece of psychology. By making it exclusive, Lustig turned businessmen into predators circling the same prize. They weren't asking, "Is this real?" They were asking, "How much do I have to bid to win?" He even gave them private tours of the tower, letting them measure beams, calculate tonnage, and dream about the fortune they'd melt down. Among them was André Poisson, an ambitious newcomer desperate to prove himself. Lustig read him instantly, flatter the man's instincts, make him feel like the smartest guy in the room, and then, just a whisper, suggest that perhaps a little extra could help speed up government approval. Poisson took the bait. He handed over a bribe big enough to make Lustig's eyes sparkle. And in the dead of night, Victor vanished with the money, leaving Poisson too humiliated to go to the police. After all, how do you admit you tried to illegally buy the Eiffel Tower? Most men would retire after pulling off the perfect crime. Not Victor Lustig. For him, that was just a rehearsal. Weeks later, he was back in Paris with the same forged papers, the same fake roll, and a fresh set of dealers. It almost worked again, until one skeptical bidder tipped off the police. Lustig fled France before they could catch him, sailing to America. If Europe was a chessboard, America was a casino. Big money, big dreams, and plenty of suckers. There, Lustig unveiled his side hustle, the Rumanian Box. A small wooden contraption with knobs and slots. It could duplicate currency. He'd slide in a genuine $100 bill, close it, wait a few hours for chemical duplication, and voila, a second bill emerged. Slide a hand, swap the note in secret. Marks, convinced they'd just seen a miracle, would buy the machine for thousands. By the time they realized they purchased a useless box with gears glued inside, Lustig was long gone. He conned bankers, businessmen, and, in his boldest play, Capone himself. Lustig borrowed $5,000 from Capone for a fake investment, then returned it untouched 2 months later, claiming the deal had fallen through, but he wanted to keep Capone's trust. The gangster, impressed by the supposed honesty, gave Lustig $1,000 for his trouble. It was the safest way to rob the most dangerous man in America, by making him think you were his most honest friend. But even the best dancers eventually trip. In Lustig's case, it wasn't some elaborate sting that got him. It was counterfeit bills. The U.S. Secret Service tracked a flood of fakes back to him. In 1935, They arrested him, but not before he pulled one last stunt, slipping out of a moving police car and disappearing into a crowded street. It worked for a few hours. When they caught him again, the curtain fell. He was sentenced to 20 years in Alcatraz, where he reportedly swapped stories with none other than Scarface himself. In 1947, pneumonia ended his life. No hidden fortune, no daring final trick. Just a legend so outrageous it still rattles the imagination today. Victor Lustig once wrote his own 10 commandments for con men. The first? Be a patient listener. It's this not fast talking that gets you the big win. And if you've stayed with this story to the end, congratulations. You just listened to the longest, smoothest scam in history. Stick around, because history's greatest liars, they make the best stories.